Yeah, the trick is being able to stay heart-centered. You know, we hear people talk about staying heart-centered, and what does that mean? Well,
Mhm.
you just defined it, Jesse. Staying heart-centered is being you. It's
Mhm.
not the masks that we wear, it's what's generated from within, because that's where our mind, will, our emotions, um, with working on As a Man Thinks, the teaching series that I've been doing, I I've seen that much stronger than I did before through what the Hebrew letters say where we reside. And so it makes a huge difference. A, having the spirit. B, being heart centered is where the true self expresses itself, and staying in that place instead of letting this get in the way. Because in actuality, from what I am seeing, that this helps us interpret things, but all this really is an interpreter. It
Mhm.
Everything stems from the heart and it gets
Mhm.
translated to the head. The head then takes all the signals to then transmit them throughout the body, but it's not really the head that's doing the thinking, it's the heart.
Mhm.
And you know, I didn't it was only really through the Hebrew letters that showed that to me, that it's like, oh, wait a minute, everything starts in the heart.
Mhm.
Everything originates from the heart. And that to me is a different concept, because we're very mind oriented, I think, in the Western culture. The Greco-Roman mindset brings everything up here, where a lot of the Eastern philosophy and the Eastern mindset, where the Hebrew mindset comes from, is all heart centered,
Mhm.
knowing that
Yes.
that is where everything is, and that's really where the mind is, in the central part of man. And I think for me, I can connect that more to, like, you know, out of the mouth the heart speaks. And even in some of the English translations where, you know, Yeshua is saying that, and I think we mentioned it last week about, you know, men, they're whitewashed tombs, but inside they're dead man bones. So they don't, this part is empty, you know, their heart is empty,
Mhm.
and that's what they're spewing forth. So really their words are vain, they're empty and they're hollow. So I finished Proverbs 23:7 this morning, the full exhaustive interpretation,
Mhm.
and I'm not going to read it to you guys because it's going to take way too long. I'll do a video of it so people can listen to it, because it's almost 11 pages of information
Oh,
in
wow.
7 Hebrew words, and the last 2 words are really about what I just said about the vanity of those who speak, that especially are wanting power of this world and are grasping through and dictating through fallen languages, meaning that of lesser vibrations, and they rule through those languages, but they're falsehoods, they're empty, and it'll lead to their ruin. And it was really interesting to see that, because here, this whole beginning of this song or this proverb is all about encouragement for us, about what
Mhm.
we're eating and what we're drinking and how we're thinking, and that we guard our thoughts, and they teach us, and it's all about the heart. And then the very last 2 words, it's like an admonishment of stay away from these people, because what they're doing will lead to their ruin, and in the end it will lead to their ruin. And to do be able to identify it was a very, very eye-opening um, proverb for me to look at, and the depth, and it makes me wonder how much more. I mean, that was just one verse, chapter 23, one verse. What about the whole book of Proverbs, written by Solomon, who encoded every single verse,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know? And the
Um,
whole first 7 chapters of Proverbs is about wisdom, you know?
yeah.
So it might be a good place. I'm thinking that I might be doing a lot of my own personal study in there. I've
Mm.
felt drawn to it for a while, but now that I can see really what is being encapsulated and what it's saying, and this is like the latter half, I mean, chapter 23, it's deeply profound, because I'm actually seeing it come to pass right now with the last 2 words, because it's basically saying that the rulers of this world who have brought forth falsehoods and vanities are coming to an end, and that they are going to be dismantled, and it's going to be given over to those who have prepared themselves, who have fed themselves and have drank spiritual food and drink, that have risen up to be their own sovereigns, that they will be coming into power instead of those who promoted the falsehoods. And so it's interesting that this proverb was something that I felt Spirit said this summer, that I really, that one time I was sharing with you, Regina, it was before Jesse started with us, and it was just
Mhm.
hounding me, for an hour over and
Mhm.
over when I was driving, and I couldn't let go. And so now, it's taken me months to get back to it, but now
Mhm.
finalizing it and seeing right where we are at
Mhm.
with the election mayhem, with all of
Yeah.
the things that are coming out, it's like, oh my, wow,
Yeah.
wow, that's amazing timing.
Yeah. I
Awesome.
came from such a sheltered, and you know, the sexual part was the worst thing you could do, and
Yeah.
so it's just really something that I have to look at and examine. And my brother and I have even had conversations on it because he was raised the same way, and we've both had to talk about how it's affected us and how that there's a spiritual aspect. I mean, a lot of those things that they do, it's it's the beastly side, it's the lower narrative, and there's a spiritual side,
Yes, there is.
and and it's actually not a physical thing. I mean, it's all internal, and it's the strongest, powerful, most powerful part. I mean, they have names, that they've attached to it, Kundalini, whatever, that it's supposed to help you go to those higher consciousness places. That is the energy for that. And so it's something you want to go to higher places, you have to look at, you know.
It is
So,
difficult, though. I think that part of what we fight in this, maybe not in our country, because the country has changed it a little bit, but they do keep it down in those base levels.
yeah,
They don't,
yes,
and maybe that was part of what Sense8 was talking about, was in these levels of connecting with someone, in the aspect of the sexual relationships, of being able to get there through the heart level. Because I know that there was, even in the Law of One, as I was listening to some of this, they did talk about that, about having, what was the purpose of that? What
yeah,
was the purpose of introducing that? And
yes,
what does it do? And they actually went through all of the chakras, and in the levels of intimacy and what it meant, and that how the higher the spiritual couples go, that the place that they meet, and just because, and apparently just because you love somebody and you choose to be intimate with them does not mean that you're meeting them at the heart center. And I thought,
oh, yeah,
that is really interesting, because you think that that's just it, right?
yeah,
But it's that unconditional love and giving nature, not just because you're exchanging, because you have hormonal
hmm,
desires. It's
yeah,
connecting at a much greater level of serving, and serving through love, with not expecting anything in return, and connecting at a much deeper level from the heart. And then you can take it up higher. You can literally take it through all of them. You can go through the rest of it. And I was never aware of that either.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so Rod did a very good job
yeah,
in that, and the questions were excellent. And I've heard other speakers speak of that same thing too, that I was researching on, because it was so deeply profound. Even the book of Urantia, it was interesting, because the book of Urantia, take it or leave it, but they had a whole section, well, not a whole section, but they did talk about how there are schools to help people understand what sex was and is for, other than just procreation.
yeah,
They were literally talking about that people that were not able to comprehend it in the lower densities would then be able to properly experience it through, like, an educational purpose, to understand why it was and is the way it is. And I had a difficult time when I first read that, because that was before any of the Law of One information.
yeah,
And I realized, wow. So going back to my thought was, those of us that have grown up within the church, you know, especially where grew up in the Baptist religion. You know, there was a lot of that Puritan type
Yeah.
movement that went in, and is like, the only time that you have sex is to procreate, and that's it. So if you had
Yeah.
3 kids, you had sex 3 times, and that's it. And then the
Yeah.
church won't even talk about it. It's
Yeah.
like, it's like a completely taboo subject. And then you wonder why, as you're having children, you're trying to raise them in the church, why they would go and do these things. And, oh, how dare you go sleep around, we're a Christian family. Well, you know what, you never talked about it, you never discussed it, you never
Right.
even brought it forth as a subject to say, hey, you know, these are things that we're going to explore, these are things that you're going to come into, you're going to have hormones that are going to do this. Or then even engaging in preparing children as they grow up into young adults, into adults, and then preparing them for what it's going to be like in intimacy in marriage, other than
Yeah.
just the act of sex.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I have contemplated that quite a bit,
Yeah.
especially when I see these 2 teaching systems of mother and father, the spirit of
Yeah.
mother and the spirit of father, about preparing us, right?
Yes.
Because mother's job prepares us, A, to tame the beast, so that we know how to rightly relate to one another, rightly relate to spiritual aspects, external manifestation.
Mm-hmm.
But that only goes so far,
Mm-hmm.
because then it's really father's job. Again, I'm talking spirit, I'm not necessarily talking about the natural mother and the natural father, although, you know, they can be that way. But you can have a mother in the flesh do all of it, you can have a father in the flesh do all of it. It's the spirit that is behind the levels of maturity. And when you get to that level of maturity through mother's teaching, then father can begin to take you into those areas of intimacy. And the root of intimacy is the heart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's the heart. It's not
Mm-hmm.
it's not about the sexual experiences. It's
Mm-hmm.
about the heart and the intimacy of the heart and the heart expression through intimacy. And I have thought that so many times, is like, these conversations should be had. It should be a common thing within a family
Yeah.
to be able to discuss it,
Absolutely.
instead of it being something that's dirty and tainted,
Mm-hmm.
and that we shouldn't experience it, because
Yeah.
there's purpose, because it grows us up spiritually. That's a whole different way of looking at it. I
Yeah.
really wish that, I'm finding out about these things like at 47 years old.
Mm-hmm.
What would have it been like if I would have learned this when I was 15 and 16 years old?
I know. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
huge. It's
Yeah.
huge. I mean, I don't know. I don't mean to put you on the spot, Jesse, because here I'm your stepmom and I'm talking about sex, but I just, your generation is we had different ways of being reared, different decades in which we grew up in. And, you know, even the sexuality in my generation, it was, there was some of that in high school, but not a lot of it. And, I graduated in 91. And so in the late 80s, yeah, it was going on, but it wasn't super prevalent. It was like, it was a selected few that decided to go down that road, but it really wasn't that many.
Mm-mm.
Shockingly, you would thought that it was, but it really wasn't that much for me in the late 80s when I was growing up. It just wasn't. It
Yeah.
could have been where I lived on the Oregon coast in my school. Maybe I was more sheltered, but you almost didn't want to be known as one who did. It's what like it appeared to be. It was not. And if you did,
Well,
all of
it
a
meant
sudden you were
it meant
labeled.
total death and separation where I came from.
Oh
And
yeah,
you were out and you
yeah,
were done.
yeah.
It was that severe. You were kicked out of your family and
Wow.
completely ostracized.
Did you
So
Yeah.
come
it
from,
was,
was that Jehovah's Witness?
well, no, but it was a cult. So
Ah,
it was a Christian cult. And so it was a kind of the same concepts. And it was severe,
guess it gives
really
me pause
severe.
for thought. Yeah.
I think that it's a huge topic that most people have really false filters, and what they pull from is just not anything that's going to get them anywhere good. So it's for different reasons, it's a huge topic for most people, I think. I think that, we all have these false, I think this society has such a false sense of, how to deal with that subject, that it's,
Yeah.
I agree.
they don't even know how to do it, and they just don't. And it's huge. And it definitely provoked a bunch of stuff in me that I know that I need to deal with. And so, um, you can't be whole and get into a relationship with somebody else and have it be what it needs to be unless you do deal with it. So I know it has to be dealt with,
And
and
I think the way that I see this being resolved is that these are one of those subjects that can only be resolved by us going inward.
yeah, yeah,
Because externally, as we talk about them, every single one of us is going to have a different opinion about
yeah,
how we feel about this subject. And
yeah,
everyone is going to have things that rise up, for for people that have gone through things that have been violations in those areas.
yes.
Those kind of things surface, or
Oh,
being,
absolutely.
being
Yeah,
raised in an ultra conservative church, you're going to have issues. um,
yeah,
or even you're going to have different thoughts if you were raised in a culture that didn't have any taboos on it. And
yeah,
so I think it's good for us to have these discussions, but really the
yeah,
resolve is going to come from within as the
yeah,
spirit is helping us wrestle through these things, to be able to separate and say, okay, what is our programming?
yeah,
What have we been programmed to believe? What is being broadcasted to us that programs us?
yeah,
What is the values that we took from our parental authorities? What did they place into us? All of these things that go into where we're at to today. I mean, I didn't expect that we would be talking about the subject, but really it is, it's a huge subject.
it
And
is.
I know for me that as much time as I spent in the church, I look back on it now and go, why wasn't there a boldness for people to come out and start talking about this in a safe environment, to say,
Mhm,
this is totally natural. I mean, this is
mhm,
an expression, and we learn and we grow. What is
mhm,
it that is, why do we have these perceptions? And
mhm.
so the reason why I feel like we can probably land the plane on this is that in the language of creation, there's procreation. And
Mhm.
when you have the right spirit teaching you, you can actually begin to go inward and sort through these things to be able to find out what is being expressed to you, so that you can cut away all that stuff that no longer serves you. All
Yes.
that stuff is like, you can have the intimate talks with yourself from the place of the heart, to have it revealed to you exactly what you need to deal with, so you can be set free from those blockages, no matter what the blockages are.
Mhm.
And honestly, and I'm saying this to us, and I'm saying this as a broadsword, I think that this is probably one of the most places, or the most courageous place that we need to go, is in regards to this subject.
Mhm.
Because I think it takes a lot of courage to
Yeah.
be able to go and address these issues.
Yeah.
Because I mean, honestly, how much of some of our woundings are from previous incarnations that we don't remember,
Mhm.
that deal specifically with this issue? Plus everything that we're experiencing in our consciousness and our subconsciousness, all smack dab together, that have surfaced in this lifetime.
Well, I even look at it as, um, if you're talking about sovereignty, if you're talking about, um, you know, tools that will get you the most results, it's like there isn't any more externally. There is no greater, um, And even the dark, even the secret societies know the power in this subject.
Yeah,
They know the spiritual aspect of it. Well, they don't fully know, but they know enough that they know it's going to push them to a way higher level. And that's what they seek out,
they
and that's
they seek
why
that
there's
power,
so much dark, horrible
right?
sexual things that they
Right.
abuse that takes place, um, that are ceremonial, that just are. So it's a powerful, powerful energy that um, that has to be addressed at some point, but definitely probably isn't a place you start, but it's definitely a place you eventually have to go, you know?
Yeah, and I think that the natural progression through teachings of Spirit and Mother and Father, it will address it at the time that we're ready to have it addressed,
Yeah, yeah,
personally. Because
sure.
I think there's lots of layers that you go through as you're digging to find the trueness of self, which is what we were originally talking about, that Jesse was talking about, that he's finding is being him, being
Yeah,
me instead
yes,
of not me. And that as
yeah.
you dig down, you start getting into those layers that you bury everything. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there.
Hmm.
There's a certain cap. And I think this is one of those that we
Yeah,
all have to address. And I know
yeah.
it's weird talking about it in mixed company. Um,
Uh-huh.
but it is worthy of us to give attention to in our private time, in our
Yeah.
own meditation, our own space,
Hmm.
to see what is there.
Yeah,
Like, open that box, you know,
yes,
take a peek in it and say, Spirit, help me understand these layers that are in here. What do I need to keep? What do I need to discard? What do I need to take a look at?
yeah.
And do an audit in this area, because
Hmm.
this is, and I'm going to land the plane here so we can change the subject, because I know it makes Jesse uncomfortable and I don't mean to. um,
No, I'm good. I
I
don't.
think that
I'm
the
fine.
reason why we have to go here,
Hmm.
personally,
Yeah,
is that those things that are in that box that we don't want to talk about, that we don't want to see, that has to do with our own sexuality and the way that we express ourselves in intimacy,
yeah,
affect every relationship that we have.
yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
And I see that very clearly in, because intimacy doesn't have to be just about the sexual encounter, but the
Oh
sexual
no.
encounter can affect the intimacy of all your
Hmm.
relationships.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like we need to go there. And that is part of that sacred space of the heart, in having intimate connections with people that are deeply profound, regardless of whether they are a partner in that area, or we're just exchanging from the heart level of the truth of who we are. And I think that that is probably the biggest disservice that has been done, is
Hmm.
because we have not allowed ourselves to have self-expression, to discuss these things, because the foundation is intimacy, heart connect.
Hmm.
It's not, we have to take it out of the base layers.
Yeah, yeah,
But
for
that's
sure.
where a lot of the woundings are in the base layers,
Hmm.
whether it's rejection, or if there's trauma that's been in it, or whatever. All in those lower chakras will affect all of our intimate relationships with our friends and family. If we want to be
Hmm.
close to people, then we have to deal with this is a root issue.
Hmm.
It's very uncomfortable to talk about it. It's very uncomfortable to face. Lord knows I've had to do a lot of that on my own, soul searching, and dig deep in those to deal with those things. So that's just kind of my thoughts on that. If we want to have those nice close relationships where we have the free flow of energy, we have to begin to look at those things.
Yes, I
So
agree. Yeah.